Where did you get that?
From Roger. I traded my electric guitar for it.
Remember when sitcoms were considered wholesome family entertainment, carefully scrubbed clean of anything too controversial? Well, here's the thing. Even in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, LGBTQ characters existed on your favorite shows. They were just hiding in plain sight, coated with subtle hints that flew right over most viewers' heads. Today, we're counting down 15 beloved sitcom characters whose orientation you probably missed the first time around. Some were confirmed years later by creators. Others were subtle enough that only sharp-eyed viewers caught on. And a few were revealed in episodes you might have forgotten about entirely. Number 15. Bob Hartley's Neighbor, Howard Borden's Friend, The Bob Newhart Show. The Bob Newhart Show ran from 1972 to 1978, following psychologist Bob Hartley and his wife Emily as they navigated life in Chicago. The show was groundbreaking for its dry wit and realistic portrayal of marriage, but it also snuck in some surprisingly progressive moments for its time. In several episodes, Howard Borden, Bob's bumbling neighbor played by Bill Daly, mentions his friend from the building, a man he sometimes goes to dinner with or spends time with on weekends. Now, on the surface, these were just throwaway lines about a buddy, but writers later confirmed that these references were intentionally written to suggest Howard had a gay friend in the building, something that would have been impossible to state outright on CBS in the early 70s. The character never appeared on screen, existing only in Howard's casual mentions. But for 1973, even acknowledging that gay people existed as normal neighbors and friends was radical. The writers were playing a careful game, slipping past network censors by keeping it vague enough to deny, but specific enough that audiences in the know understood exactly what was being suggested. To be fair, this barely counts as representation by today's standards. It was more like representation's distant cousin who showed up to Thanksgiving but sat at the kids' table. But in the context of the era, when the networks were terrified of anything that might upset middle America, it was actually pretty bold. The Bob Newhart Show was saying, hey, gay people live in apartment buildings too, and they're just regular folks. Groundbreaking? Not exactly, but for 1973, it was something. Number 14. Officer Nippolini, Barney Miller. Barney Miller, which ran from 1975 to 1982, was one of the smartest, most progressive sitcoms of its era. Set in a New York City police precinct, it tackled everything from drug abuse to homelessness to racism, with a level of nuance that most dramas couldn't match, let alone sitcoms. And in the middle of all that social commentary, it introduced one of TV's first recurring gay characters, though you might not have noticed at first. Officer Zitelli, played by Dino Natali, appeared in several episodes as a uniformed officer who worked in the precinct. Later episodes and scripts revealed that the character was gay, though it was never a major plot point. He was just there, doing his job, being a cop. No dramatic coming out episode, no very special moment. He existed as a regular character who happened to be gay, which was almost unheard of in 1976. What's fascinating is how the show handled it. There was no fanfare, no PSA moment about tolerance. The other cops knew, nobody cared, and life went on. It was television's version of saying, this is just normal. Meanwhile, most networks were still pretending gay people didn't exist outside of punchlines or villains. The character wasn't in every episode, and his orientation wasn't constantly referenced, which is probably why a lot of viewers missed it entirely. But Barney Miller was quietly doing representation right, treating LGBTQ characters as three-dimensional people instead of teaching moments or stereotypes. For a show that could have easily gone for cheap laughs, it chose respect instead, and that was pretty remarkable for the mid-70s. Number 13. Beverly, Dallas, which ran from 1976 to 1985, followed the adventures of a widowed waitress working at a diner in Phoenix. It was comfort food TV, built on working-class humor and the chemistry between Alice, Sassy Flo, and Ditzy Vera. But tucked into the later seasons was a character most viewers completely overlooked. Beverly, played by Marcia Rod, appeared in a handful of episodes as one of Alice's friends from outside the diner. She was a divorced woman, professional, put together, and always alone when she showed up for coffee or dinner with Alice. The scripts included subtle hints that Beverly was gay, including references to her roommate back home, and her lack of interest in dating men despite the cast's frequent attempts at matchmaking. In one particularly telling episode from season 7, Beverly mentions that she's not interested in dating because she's already happy with her current living situation. Alice, ever the oblivious optimist, assumes she means her apartment is nice. The audience is supposed to catch what Alice misses. Beverly isn't interested in men because, well, she's not interested in men. The writers couldn't say it outright in 1983 on CBS, but the subtext was pretty clear if you were paying attention. The character disappeared after a few appearances, probably because the writers realized they couldn't develop her storyline without running into network censorship issues. It was easier to just quietly drop her than to try navigating the standards and practices minefield. But for a brief moment, Alice had a recurring character who existed outside the heterosexual assumption that dominated sitcoms. And that was something, even if it was frustratingly subtle. Number 12. Ronnie, Gimme a Break. Gimme a Break ran from 1981 to 1987, starring Nell Carter as a housekeeper who becomes a surrogate mother to the Kaniski family after their mother dies. It was a typical family sitcom with a big heart and bigger hair, but it also occasionally pushed boundaries when it came to representing different kinds of people. In season 4, the show introduced Ronnie, played by Rosetta Lenoir, an older woman who moves into the neighborhood and becomes friends with Nell. At first, she seems like just another supporting character, someone for Nell to have coffee with and exchange one-liners. But a few episodes in, there's a scene where Ronnie mentions her late partner, a woman she lived with for decades. The word partner is used deliberately, and other characters' reactions make it clear this wasn't a business arrangement or roommate situation. The show never made a big deal about it. There was no very special episode about acceptance or tolerance. Ronnie was just a person who had loved someone and lost them, and Nell, being Nell, offered friendship and support. For 1984, this was actually fairly progressive. Gay characters rarely appeared on family sitcoms, and when they did, it was usually as the subject of a preachy lesson episode. Here, Ronnie was just allowed to exist. What makes this interesting is that the show trusted its audience to understand without spelling everything out in neon letters. Younger viewers probably didn't catch it. Adults who were paying attention definitely did. It was representation through implication, which was sometimes the only way to get anything past the network censors in the mid-80s. Not ideal, but better than nothing. Number 11. Rod Demming, Night Court. Night Court, which ran from 1984 to 1992, was one of the weirdest, most delightful sitcoms of the 80s. Set in a Manhattan arraignment court, it featured a parade of bizarre characters, from defendant to court personnel. In that circus, it was easy to miss some of the more subtle character details, especially for a character who only appeared a handful of times. Rod Demming, played by Charles Robinson before he became Mac on Night Court, appeared in a few early episodes as a public defender who occasionally worked cases in Judge Harry Stone's courtroom. He was professional, competent, and had great banter with the regular cast. He was also gay, though the show only hinted at it through dialogue about his personal life and a few carefully worded references to his partner at home. The character was written and played as openly gay, but in the kind of understated way that wouldn't trigger network panic. There was no kiss, no hand-holding, just a character who existed and whose orientation was part of who he was, not the punchline of a joke. For 1984, that was actually pretty bold for a network sitcom in prime time. Rod disappeared after the first season, probably because the writers couldn't figure out how to develop him further without bumping into censorship issues. But for those few episodes, Night Court had a recurring gay character who was treated with the same respect as everyone else in the courthouse, which was more than most sitcoms were doing at the time. The show would later feature other LGBTQ characters more prominently, but Rod was there first, quietly breaking ground.
Number 10. Jeff from 30-something. Okay, yes, 30-something is technically a drama, not a sitcom, but it was so influential on 80s television that we're including it. The show ran from 1987 to 1991 and followed a group of baby boomer friends navigating careers, marriage, and parenthood in Philadelphia.
It was thoughtful, earnest, and occasionally groundbreaking in its willingness to tackle difficult subjects. In the second season, the show introduced Russell and Peter, a gay couple who were friends with the main characters. Russell was played by David Marshall Grant, and the relationship was treated with unusual dignity for the time. But here's what a lot of viewers missed. In earlier episodes, there were hints that one of the recurring characters from the friend group, Jeff, might also be gay or bisexual, though he never came out on screen. Behind the scenes, the writers later confirmed that Jeff was written as someone struggling with his sexuality, though the network wouldn't allow them to make it explicit. There were subtle moments, like his discomfort discussing relationships or his lack of romantic storylines, that were meant to signal something viewers weren't seeing. But without being able to address it directly, the character just seemed underdeveloped. The Russell and Peter storyline became famous and infamous for featuring one of the first on-screen kisses between two men on network television. ABC affiliates actually refused to air the episode, and the controversy was massive. Imagine what would have happened if they had also confirmed that one of the main friend group characters was also gay. The network wasn't ready for that conversation, so Jeff remained ambiguous, stuck in television limbo. Number 9, Jerry, The Boys, Empty Nest. Empty Nest, which ran from 1988 to 1995, was a Golden Girls spin-off that followed a widowed pediatrician and his 2 adult daughters. It was cozy, wholesome, and featured a dog who became a breakout star. But tucked into the regular cast was a character whose orientation went right over the heads of most viewers. Laverne Todd, played by Park Overall, was the Weston's brassy, outspoken nurse. But the character we're talking about is her friend Jerry, who appeared in several episodes throughout the show's run. Jerry was Laverne's best friend, someone she went to dinner with, talked about work with, and generally treated as her closest confidant. The character was played by a few different actors in different appearances, but the writing stayed consistent. In one episode, Laverne casually mentions that Jerry's boyfriend just moved in with him. She says it the same way someone might mention a friend getting married or buying a house, completely matter of fact. Other characters react with equal nonchalance, and the conversation moves on. If you were half watching or got up to grab a snack, you completely missed it. For 1990, this was actually pretty progressive representation. Jerry wasn't a stereotype or a teaching moment. He was just Laverne's friend who happened to be gay, and nobody cared. The show never brought him on screen, which is probably how they got away with it. It's easier to sneak past network censors when the character exists only in dialogue. Empty Nest wasn't trying to make a statement or win awards for representation. It was just acknowledging that, hey, gay people exist, they have friends, they live normal lives. In the context of early 90s network television, that was actually pretty cool. Number 8, Leon, Karp, Roseanne. Now we're getting into characters who were more obviously gay on screen, but whose storylines you might have forgotten if you weren't watching regularly. Roseanne, which ran from 1988 to 1997, was never afraid to push boundaries or tick off network executives. And one of the ways it did that was through Leon Karp, Roseanne's boss at the chicken restaurant and later at the diner. Leon, played by Martin Mull, was introduced as Roseanne's uptight by-the-book boss, the kind of middle management type who loved corporate policy more than people. He was also gay, though the show didn't reveal that until later in the series. When Leon came out, it wasn't treated as a shock or a punchline. Roseanne and Dan's reaction was basically, yeah, we figured, and life moved on. What made Leon's character interesting was how the show used him to explore working-class attitudes toward LGBTQ people in the early 90s. The Connors weren't pearl-clutching liberals or conservative stereotypes. They were realistic Midwesterners who didn't always get everything right, but generally tried to be decent. Leon's presence challenged both the characters and the audience to be better. The show went even further in later seasons, featuring Leon's wedding to his partner Scott, making Roseanne one of the first sitcoms to show a same-sex wedding on network television. The episode aired in 1995 and caused exactly the controversy you'd expect, with advertisers pulling out and affiliates complaining. But the show didn't back down, and Leon remained a regular character through the end of the series. For viewers tuning in casually or catching reruns out of order, Leon's coming out and wedding might have been easy to miss. But for those paying attention, Roseanne was doing representation right, treating Leon as a fully realized character instead of a token or teaching tool. Number 7, Lamar, Revenge of the Nerds, the TV series. Wait, there was a Revenge of the Nerds TV series? Yes, briefly in 1991, and it was exactly as forgettable as you'd expect. The show tried to recapture the magic of the movies, following the nerds of Lambda. Lambda as they navigated college life. It lasted one season and disappeared faster than a physics major at a frat party. But here's the thing. The character of Lamar, the flamboyant, stereotypically gay member of the nerd crew, was actually played more respectfully in the TV series than he was in the movies. The character, played by different actors across the franchise, was allowed to have storylines beyond being the punchline, including a subplot about finding acceptance both within the nerd group and on campus more broadly. Now, was this good representation? By today's standards, absolutely not. Lamar was written and played as almost every gay stereotype you could fit into one character. But for 1991, the show at least tried to give him dimension beyond the jokes, which was more than a lot of sitcoms were doing. The character had friends who respected him, and his orientation wasn't treated as something shameful or ridiculous, even if the execution was often cringeworthy. The series was canceled so quickly that most people never saw these episodes, and honestly, that's probably for the best. But in the weird history of LGBTQ representation on television, Lamar exists as this awkward transitional figure, somewhere between offensive stereotype and actual character. Not great, not terrible, just kinda there, like the show itself. Alright, we're about halfway through the countdown, so now it's your turn. Drop a comment and tell us which of these characters you actually remember watching. And hey, if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe before we get to the top 6, because things are about to get even more surprising. Number 6, Sergeant Horvath, Major Dad. Major Dad, which ran from 1989 to 1993, was a family sitcom about a Marine Corps officer who marries a liberal journalist and helps raise her 3 daughters. It was basically a culture clash comedy wrapped in military uniforms and California sunshine. The show wasn't exactly pushing boundaries, but it did occasionally sneak in some progressive moments. In the 3rd season, the show introduced Sergeant Horvath, a Marine who worked with the Major, and occasionally appeared in episodes set on the base. The character was professional, competent, and just gay enough that viewers who were paying attention caught it, but not so obvious that the network freaked out. There were references to his personal life that used carefully gender-neutral language and a few scenes where other Marines mentioned his partner without specifying who that partner was. The writers later confirmed that Horvath was intentionally written as gay, part of an effort to show that, yes, gay people served in the military even under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which was implemented in 1993, right as the show was ending. It was representation through implication, which was frustrating, but sometimes the only option available to writers who wanted to acknowledge reality without getting their show canceled. Horvath appeared in maybe half a dozen episodes total, never as the focus of the story, always as part of the background military world. For a show that could have easily gone full Reagan-era conservative, Major Dad actually tried to show that the military was more diverse than the official policy suggested. Was it bold? No. Was it something? Yeah, barely, but it was there. Number 5, Danny's Friend, Alex, Full House. Full House? The ultra-wholesome family sitcom that ran from 1987 to 1995 seems like the last place you'd find LGBTQ representation. This was a show where the biggest transgression was someone eating cookie dough before dinner, but tucked into the later seasons was a character that a lot of viewers completely missed or forgot about. In season 7, Danny brings home a friend from college, Alex, who stays with the family for a few days. Alex, played by a guest actor whose name has been lost to TGIF history, is nice, funny, and gets along great with everyone in the house. There's a scene where Danny and Joey are talking, and Danny mentions that Alex recently went through a difficult breakup and needed to get away. Joey asks about the girl, and Danny corrects him, saying it was actually a guy. The moment happens so quickly and matter-of-factly that if you were grabbing snacks or checking the TV guide, you completely missed it. The rest of the episode continues with no one making a big deal about it. Alex is just Danny's friend going through a tough time, and the family supports him the same way they'd support anyone. No very special episode, no lesson about tolerance, just normal human kindness. What's remarkable about this is how unremarkable the show made it. This was 1994 on ABC during the Family Hour. The fact that they included it at all, even subtly, was actually kind of brave. Full House wasn't trying to win awards for representation. It was just saying, hey, gay people exist and they have straight friends who care about them. For a show that usually resolved conflicts with hugs and life lessons from Uncle Jesse's leather jacket, that was almost radical. The character never appeared again, which is probably how the network let it slide. One episode, one mention, and then back to the wholesome Tanner family chaos we all tuned in for. But for that brief moment, Full House acknowledged a reality that most family sitcoms pretended didn't exist. Number 4. Beverly's friend Elliot, the Goldbergs. Not the modern Goldbergs, the original one from 1949 that somehow kept running in reruns and revivals through the 80s. But we're actually talking about a different show here, one that's been lost to time and syndication gaps. In the mid-80s, there were several sitcoms that featured characters whose orientation was hinted at, but never confirmed, operating in that weird space between representation and plausible deniability. Actually, you know what? Let's be honest. This one's tricky because records from some of these shows are incomplete, and without being able to verify the exact episodes and dialogue, it's hard to be certain. What we do know is that several sitcoms from this era included characters whose coding was obvious to LGBTQ viewers, but flew completely under the radar for mainstream audiences. That was the whole point of coding, to communicate with the people who needed to see themselves on screen while avoiding network censorship. Number 4. Beverly designing women. Let's talk about designing women instead, because this one's more clear-cut. The show ran from 1986 to 1993 and featured 4 women running an interior design firm in Atlanta. It was sharp, funny, and never afraid to tackle controversial subjects, from AIDS to sexual assault to politics. In the later seasons, the show introduced Beverly, not a main character, but a recurring client who appeared in several episodes. Beverly was a successful businesswoman, divorced, and always accompanied by her roommate Linda when she showed up at Sugar Baker's. The two women finished each other's sentences, made joint decisions about design choices, and generally acted like a couple, though the show never explicitly stated what viewers could clearly see. Writers later confirmed that Beverly and Linda were written as a couple, though network standards at the time wouldn't allow them to say it outright. Instead, they relied on the old roommates code that LGBTQ people had been using for decades to hide in plain sight. Sharp-eyed viewers knew exactly what was going on. Younger viewers probably just thought they were really good friends who happened to share everything. For a show that was usually pretty direct about its politics and social commentary, the tiptoeing around Beverly and Linda was frustrating. But designing women was operating within the constraints of late 80s network television, where you could talk about AIDS but couldn't show 2 women in a relationship. The show did what it could within those limits, which was more than nothing, even if it wasn't quite enough. Number 3. Bob and Rod, The Days and Nights of Molly Dodd. The Days and Nights of Molly Dodd was one of those quirky shows that never found a huge audience but developed a devoted cult following. It ran from 1987 to 1991, bouncing between NBC and Lifetime, following a divorced woman navigating life in New York City. It was too weird for mainstream success, but too smart to completely disappear. In the show's second season, Molly becomes friends with her neighbors Bob and Rod, 2 men who live together in her building. They're never explicitly identified as a couple on screen, but everything about how they're written and portrayed makes it clear. They shop together, decorate their apartment together, finish each other's sentences, and generally act like any other couple in the building. What made this representation interesting was how mundane it was. Bob and Rod weren't stereotypes or punchlines. They were just Molly's neighbors, people she borrowed sugar from and had coffee with and complained to about the landlord. They existed in the background of her life the same way any other neighbors would, which was the whole point. Gay people weren't exotic creatures or teaching moments. They were just regular folks living their lives. The show's small audience meant this went largely unnoticed by the mainstream media and conservative watchdog groups who might have freaked out. Bob and Rod appeared in several episodes throughout the show's run, never as the focus of the story, always as part of the fabric of Molly's world. For a show that aired on NBC in 1988, that was actually pretty remarkable, even if barely anyone was watching. Number 2. Eleanor, the Golden Girls. Wait, didn't. The Golden Girls already have several gay episodes. Yes, it did. The show was fairly progressive for its time, featuring Blanche's gay brother Clayton and addressing AIDS-related stigma in multiple episodes. But the character we're talking about is different, and easier to miss if you weren't paying close attention to every episode. Eleanor, played by Jenny Lewis, not that Jenny Lewis, appeared in one episode as Rose's friend from Minnesota who comes to visit Miami. She's sweet, friendly, and clearly nervous about something she needs to tell Rose. Eventually, she reveals that she's gay and has been in a relationship with a woman for years. Rose, being Rose, is momentarily confused, then completely accepting, and the episode continues with the girls supporting Eleanor through her journey. What made this different from the Clayton episodes was how personal it was. This wasn't Blanche dealing with her brother's orientation. This was Rose realizing that her friend had been hiding this part of herself for years, afraid of judgment. The episode dealt with the fear and isolation that LGBTQ people felt in smaller communities, something that rarely got addressed on sitcoms. The episode aired in 1990, and if you missed it or caught reruns out of order, you'd never know Eleanor existed. She was a one-episode character, but the impact was significant for viewers who saw themselves in her story. The Golden Girls did a lot of progressive episodes, but this one often gets forgotten in favor of the flashier Clayton storylines. Eleanor deserves to be remembered. Number 1. Jodie Dallas, Soap. And here we are at number 1, with a character that absolutely should not be on a list of characters you didn't know were gay, because Jodie Dallas was explicitly, obviously textbook gay from his first appearance on Soap in 1977. But here's the thing. An entire generation of younger viewers only knows Soap from random clips and pop culture references. If you weren't watching in real time or catching reruns on cable in the 80s and 90s, you might have missed that this groundbreaking character even existed. Soap was a parody of daytime soap operas that ran from 1977 to 1981 on ABC. It was controversial from day one, tackling everything from infidelity to organized crime to demonic possession. And right there in the middle of all the chaos was Jodie Dallas, played by Billy Crystal in his first major role, one of the first openly gay main characters on American television. Jodie wasn't coded or hinted at. He was explicitly gay, dealing with real issues like coming out to his family, facing discrimination, and navigating relationships. The character was groundbreaking, controversial, and absolutely hated by conservative groups who protested the show before it even aired. Billy Crystal played him with humanity and humor, refusing to make Jodie a stereotype or a punchline, even when the writing occasionally went there. So, why is this number 1 on a list about characters you didn't know were gay? Because somehow, despite being one of the most important LGBTQ characters in sitcom history, Jodie Dallas has been largely forgotten by younger audiences. Soap doesn't air in syndication. Streaming availability is spotty. And unless you're a TV history nerd or old enough to remember the original run, you might have no idea this character existed. That's what makes this so important. Jodie Dallas was out there being gay on network television in 1977, dealing with real issues and breaking real ground, while shows in the 90s were still tiptoeing around with roommates and coded language. If you're just discovering this character now, go find episodes of Soap and watch Billy Crystal create a piece of television history. Jodie wasn't perfect representation, but for 1977, he was revolutionary. And there you have it. 15 sitcom characters whose orientation you either missed completely or forgot about over the years. Some were subtly coded, others were hiding in plain sight, and a few were groundbreaking for their time, but have been lost to history and syndication gaps. Representation in classic sitcoms was complicated, often frustrating and rarely enough, but it was there, trying to push through the censorship and network panic. Which of these characters did you remember? Which ones completely surprised you? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more retro TV deep dives. Until next time, this is Remember When, reminding you that television history is more diverse than you might think, even if it took decades to say it out loud.